and welcome to a very exciting travel reading vlog, and today our adventures will take us to Scotland. And I also have a couple of books on my TBR that are set in Scotland, so it's going to be a very immersive reading vlog for you guys. Now, if we are being honest, which I try to be, I went to Scotland last year and have sat on all of this footage for over a year, but I think the time has finally arrived for me to actually make this reading vlog that I planned to do last year but had no time to do. So today I'm bringing you my Scotland adventures, which I'm so excited to share with you all because I had the best time. How my travel vlogs usually work is I will just give you reading updates in between all of the B-roll footage that I took while in Scotland and explain what I'm doing in said B-roll before I show said B-roll. That way you have a little bit of context. I just don't like to vlog while I travel. I love to take videos and pictures, but actually like talking to the camera, I don't find a lot of joy in. So I've kind of adapted to have this format be the format that I enjoy the most while still getting to share my adventures with you all. The first book on my TBR should come to absolutely no one's surprise, as I will be picking up Outlander. This is the main book on my TBR, and from what I've gathered, a woman touches a stone and is sent back in time to the Highlands of Scotland. And as for the adventures and things that happen, I suppose I will discover as I pick up this novel. I am so incredibly excited. I have been in such a high fantasy mood lately, reading The Lord of the Rings, Game of Thrones, The Realm of the Elderlings, continuing on the Stormlight Archives, and now Outlander, so I really am just like checking off all of the iconic and well-renowned series. And to balance out this heavier fantasy novel, I actually have Kilt. Addie is this travel consultant who apparently has beef with Scotland for some reason, and she actually ends up having to go to Scotland to help save this family-run Highlands tour company and also save her own job. And then we have Logan, who is a rough and tough Highlander man, and they immediately are not getting along. So I guess a little bit of like, you know, contemporary enemies to lovers moment, and I'm so excited. The moment I knew that I was doing a Scotland reading vlog, I put this book on my TBR because how perfect is this? I cannot wait to share my reading and my adventures with you all. So the first location I will be going to is Edinburgh, because I flew into Edinburgh and then I explored a little bit of Arthur's Seat. Didn't quite make it to the very top. If you know anything about Arthur's Seat, it's a very, very long and tall and a little bit laborious hike, but I went to like an edge on Arthur's Seat, I guess like a hill area right outside of Edinburgh, and it was beautiful to look down upon the old city and to see all the architecture. And yeah, without further ado, let's just hop right into the vlog. I have officially started Outlander, and I'm so delighted that we only spent a couple chapters in present day before actually like going back in time, because I was a little scared. I'm gonna be so honest, you guys. I was like, uh-oh, how long are we gonna be in present day? Because I want to get to the hot Scottish people, and we're not there yet. However, we are on page 67, which is chapter 5, and so far Claire's experience has not been grand in any part of her life, I will say. She's supposed to be on her honeymoon, and her annoying husband, Frank kind of sucks. And Frank doesn't just suck because he's a history nerd and continues to leave his wife out of activities that, I don't know, they're on their honeymoon. And then you're talking about history, and clearly your wife doesn't really care that much. And then Claire used to be a travel nurse in the war, and she experienced a lot of trauma and picked up a lot of language as well, and is very strong as a character so far, from what I understand and have gathered. And Frank kind of sucks, you guys. And it's also kind of alluded to that Frank cheated on Claire. It's not outright admitted. However, if your partner accuses you on your, not honeymoon, what am I saying? It's like a wedding anniversary. I don't know why I'm saying honeymoon. They've been married for quite a few years at this point. But if your partner accuses, okay, no, let me, actually, the more I think about it, the more it makes me mad. Let me lay the scene for you guys. Frank is out and about, and he sees this random Scottish man staring into Claire's window. Okay, and it's nighttime, and her lights are on and her window's open because clearly Claire's dumb too because people can see straight in, right? Random Scottish man on the side of the street staring at Frank's wife, Claire, right? Frank sees that, I think goes to confront him, and then the man kind of like walks away and kind of vanishes into the night, right? Frank then goes, so, you treat any Scots when you were a nurse? Claire's like, nah, why? And then she's like, hold up, you think that random man you saw staring into my window was not a creep, but rather someone that I might have cheated on? And he's like, whoa, like, I'm not saying nothing, you know? But like, you know, like, you were gone for a lot of years, okay? That's a long time for you to be gone, okay? And then Claire's like, no, what the heck? I think she was gone for like 4 years or something like that. And she was like, 4 years is a long time to be gone for, Frank. So Frank kind of sucks. So it's kind of alluded to that Frank is a filthy cheater. And then Claire ends up stumbling back in time, basically. There was a stone. Oh my gosh, she touched the stone. She went back in time, and Frank sucks. That's kind of what I've gathered. But poor Claire, she can't catch a break. Because she finally, you know, wasn't like running away from her husband or whatever. But in my head, I'm like, she finally got away from her husband, who's a loser, only to then get assaulted, called a whore, and then kidnapped immediately when going back in time. So, Claire is just having a rough go, but she is better than me because she kind of heals one of her kidnappers. From that point, she discovers like, oh, I've been back. I guess I'm back in time. And she kind of just accepts it at that point. She went from like saying all these like medicinal things, like, do you have disinfectant and this and that? And they're like, what are you saying, woman? And then she goes, I'm a nurse. And they go, you're a wet nurse? Like, you have a lot of healing abilities to just be a wet nurse. So this book is unironically hilarious, but also is frustrating me to no end because why does everyone suck so far? We're set though during a time when the English and the Scottish are in war. So Claire is kidnapped by the Scottish, who then get attacked by the English, and then they make their escape, and they're now in a fort, and that's kind of where we left off. So like I said, I'm only like 60 or so pages in, so not a lot has happened, but also so much has happened. Also though, we have seen some locations that I myself have visited, which was very, very exciting. They talked about seeing the ruins of, and pardon my pronunciation about anything I say, okay, but Urquhart Castle, which I will show you not in the next B-roll, but I think the B-roll after that I will share with you. But the next B-roll that we're going to be talking about is downtown Edinburgh, which I loved getting to explore. It was so much fun, and also it felt slightly cheesy by the fact that like any street you walk down, like a really popular tourist street, there would be buskers playing the bagpipe, which is just the most cliche Scottish thing that I could think of. And it really just made the mood of walking downtown and walking around Edinburgh so magical and very, very Scottish. So I'm gonna go ahead, share those clips with you, and then I will come back with more of a reading update, and hopefully Claire's situation improves. Because right now, I feel like she's really going through it, but hasn't quite accepted the fact that she's really going through it. Such a magical experience, and honestly that segue from exploring downtown Edinburgh to talking about Kilt Trip is perfect. So perfect. I am on chapter 14, which is 118 pages in to this novel, and I already feel like I might need to own this book, you guys. It has been a delightful time already, and I love our characters, and okay, let me compose myself. I'm just delighted to finally be reading a romance that I like, because I feel like I've been reading a lot of duds lately where the characters both suck. I briefly spoke about what this book is about, but now that I'm over 100 pages into it, I have a little more of a clue about what's going on. So Addie has been sent to Scotland by her travel agency to become a travel consultant for Logan's family business. They explore hidden gems of Edinburgh, And Addie sneaks into one of Logan's tours and sees how Logan does the tour, what the locations they go to, but she did give him a fake name. However, after the tour, they kind of hit it off, if we're being honest, and Addie's like, oh, what a hottie, like, oh my gosh. And Logan's like, I couldn't take my eye off of that mysterious stranger. So when Addie goes to talk to this family, she thought that he was talking to Jack, who is Logan's brother. Turns out that Logan is the one in charge. Logan is the one that Addie has to speak to. And when Logan realizes that Addie was snooping on his tour and gave him a false name, he is pissed because he's also seen this American come in and try to like commercialize his tour and make it more mainstream to appeal to a wider audience, which from an advertising standpoint, I understand Addie's perspective about advertising and getting this tour known and out there. And to do that, you have to go to the kind of cliche places. However, Logan, who has lived his entire life in Scotland, is like, no, I don't want tourists to just come here to do all the cliche things without actually getting to fall in love with the country as much as I love it myself. So there's a lot of animosity between these two characters. Logan is constantly trying to sabotage Addie's efforts in revamping this tour company, but the funny part is Addie has kind of won over his entire family, his mom, his brothers, his father, like everyone involved in the family business really likes Addie and likes the direction she's trying to take things because they understand the numbers, like they're struggling, they need the help. But Logan is so staunch in his ways because the last time he took a risk, things didn't play out, and now that's kind of the reason why things are struggling and certain people got blacklisted. So he's just really scared to change what has been working. Although Addie loves Scotland, she also has a lot of grief surrounding her mother and Scotland itself. So she's balancing that while Logan is trying so hard to convince her to love this country and to fall in love with this country. And Addie kind of is in the realization right now that maybe she is a little lonely because yes, you travel the world and you meet hundreds of people, but do you really have like your core someone? So we're kind of at that point where we're having that realization. They're kind of like, wait, that initial attraction we had has not gone away. And I hope that they, well, I mean, obviously they're gonna explore it because it's a romance book, but I hope that they explore it in a way that is beneficial for the both of them and make their boundaries clear. I'm really, really excited because again, I'm really, really enjoying these characters because you can understand them so much, like both sides of the coin. They both feel very justified in their actions. And I feel like the animosity between the characters make sense. I recently read this one book where the characters didn't like one another and it made no sense as to why they didn't like one another or why they were fighting. So finally reading a book where the conflict feels grounded in reality and not some nonsensical plot point just added to have conflict has made this a really, really refreshing read. Even though it feels like maybe a silly title, I'm really enjoying the descriptions that Alexandra Kiley is putting into this book about Edinburgh and about Scotland. I literally felt transported back to Scotland while reading this novel, which was so delightful. For obvious reasons. However, it made me miss Scotland so much, especially when they were describing the Highlands. They were talking about visiting Arthur's Seat and like looking over the city, and I was like, oh my gosh, I did that and I miss it so much. Reading this has really, really made me want to go back, and I hope to one day go back for sure. I also made a few more chapters into Outlander. Honestly, not that many more chapters compared to the last time that I spoke to you. I'm on chapter 8 now. I think I left off on chapter 5. So 102 pages in though, we have broke the 100-page mark. And this book is honestly hysterical. Like, I don't think it's supposed to be as funny as it is. But Claire, with her healing abilities, they decide to send her into the old healers workshop essentially and kind of categorize and figure things out. And she just becomes the new healer of this, I think they're in a castle or a fort, one of the two. And she's looking through all of the objects that this old healer has, and it is hysterical. There's like feces and bugs and things that you should not ever use on a human being. She's like, wow, it's a shock that he was a healer. And someone was like, we didn't say he was very good. Why is this book actually so funny? I also enjoy how simple the writing is for a high fantasy. I feel like it's a really digestible novel. I listened to the audiobook for the few chapters that I read past chapter 5, and my one gripe is you can hear like static white noise in the background because I think it's a really old recording, and I'm like, someone needs to clean this audio up because it's kind of atrocious to listen to. But I do really like the narrator. Just the static and the white noise in the background kind of grates on my nerves, but once you listen to it for like a couple minutes, you kind of start to ignore it. But initially when I started listening to it, I was like, what's happening right now? Actually, what is happening? I'm so glad I'm having so much fun, although, like I said, it's making me so nostalgic for the trip that I took last year, and I love that I'm able to share my trip with you all in this vlog. And now we are heading up to the Highlands, which is basically my favorite part of the entire trip. I wish they just dropped me off and left me, okay? I cannot wait to share all of these with you guys. The views were stunning. Editing this footage, like I said, has made me so nostalgic. Like, I cannot believe that locations like this exist, and it just feels so incredibly magical. So I hope you enjoy, and I will come back, of course, when I have more reading updates. I definitely anticipate myself finishing or getting very, very close to finishing Kilt Trip, and hopefully I can make more than 3 chapters of progress into Outlander. I am now on page 212, which is the beginning of chapter 16, and I am really starting to enjoy my time in the Outlander universe. For the first like 150 pages or so, I honestly was just getting acquainted with the characters, like obviously, but I felt like we didn't really have a direction that the story was going, and I still don't feel that way. It feels a little meandering, where obviously Claire's overarching goal is to get back to present day, but I feel like I can't tell where else this story is leading to, because clearly things are going down that is going to make it a little difficult for her to get back to present day. Also, I know I keep saying this, but Claire is really approaching this whole being sent back in time with the most calm and irrational mind ever. She is being so chill about so many things going on, embracing her new role in this sort of world and around these people, and keeping her cover story going. And she has been, again, so chill about it until recently, when there was a marriage of convenience type of moment, or I guess like I don't know if it's like a forced marriage, sort of marriage of convenience. Basically, Claire's life was in jeopardy, so she did in fact marry someone to save her from a pretty difficult situation, a little bit of a sticky spot that she got herself into through no fault of her own, mind you. However, the marriage is the first time we saw Claire's calm facade absolutely break, and she was just not having it. She was like, no, like, I'm not gonna marry someone, like, I can't, I literally cannot. And it was so good because through a cruel twist of fate, the chapel where her and Frank got married is the same chapel where she got married again. Oh my god, it was so good. And also, I totally understand, you guys, why Jamie Fraser is so loved, okay? I didn't really understand it in the earlier chapters because, yeah, like, he's a good dude, he's a nice dude, whatever. Like, there's little flirtatious moments going on. But then, I get it, you guys. I get it. There were certain scenes occurring and like the choices he's making and the things he's saying, they're all the correct things. I'm like, dang, where can I find me a man like Jamie Fraser? Like, I get it, you guys. I totally get it. So really enjoying my time in the Outlander universe, if you will. I do want more of a direction about where things are going because, again, I'm still kind of confused, but I'm really excited with the direction we are now taking this story, obviously slipping in more of the romance. And yeah, it's just pretty slow and meandering at this point, but I'm once again enjoying the characters and enjoying my time in Scotland. I also did end up finishing Kilt Trip by Alexandra Kiley, and honestly, it was okay. Like, it wasn't like a phenomenal read by any means, but it was fun. I really enjoyed the characters and their dynamic, especially in the middle of the book. Let me say, like, that happy middle when they both finally accepted their feelings for one another after, like, despising each other. But then, on the flip side, at the end of the book, they had their third act breakup, and I just felt like the third act breakup went on for way too long. These people were wallowing in despair, and it was not fun to read about. Like, I understand it was necessary for these characters to spend the time apart that they did near the end, but I don't think it had to be for that extended period of time, because reading about it, I was like, oh my gosh, suck it up. Go reconcile, get on the same page again, because this is just not a fun, cutesy little romance moment. Really brought the mood down a little bit. But one thing that I did really enjoy about this book is how much of myself that I saw in Addie's character. As someone who travels a lot, yes, you meet a lot of people and you have a lot of really cool experiences, but sometimes it does get pretty lonely and isolating. And Addie's problem is she travels so much, but nowhere really feels like home to her. Nowhere really feels like a place where she can really establish roots. And because of that, she feels very unsettled in not only her housing sort of situation or her living situation, but also just in her life. And establishing a home isn't something she realized she desperately needed until she went to Edinburgh and really fell in love with the country and the city. And of course, Logan as well. There was a lot of things these characters needed to work through individually in order to kind of come together. But I will say with Logan, he just kind of reached a breaking point, which is what kind of triggered the third act breakup. Addie has a lot of things she keeps very close to her chest that she's not really willing to share or divulge with people. And she also has a lot of issues with her family, and I feel like those things were introduced but never truly worked through. For example, her father, after her mom died, basically was just a shell of who he used to be and kind of didn't know how to function at all after his wife passed away, and left Addie hanging with a lot of things in her life. And she really wanted him to step up and realize that she was still there and she deserved that attention and the love that a child should get. And she didn't get that. So they had one phone conversation working through some stuff, but not even a very long conversation. It literally ended with Addie angrily hanging up. And then in the epilogue, suddenly it's hunky-dory. Some rifts and some problems between characters could have been actually worked through rather than like, time jump, everything is fine now. So I wish we got a little bit more of those conversations, but overall it was a fun read. I really enjoyed the descriptions of Scotland and Edinburgh, and even at one point they went to Amsterdam, which I have also visited. So it did really give me all the nostalgic vibes for these places that I have visited. And once again, relating to Addie a little bit as a character in terms of the wanderlust and hunting after the kind of thrill of travel made it a kind of enjoyable read because, again, I could see so much of myself in Addie. So fun time. I don't know if I'm going to read Alexandra Kiley's other book. She has a second book in this Scotland series. I can't remember. I think it's called like Scott and Tell or something like that. I don't know if I'm going to read it though, because the premise is weird in terms of like the romance. It's a second chance romance, but the way that the first romance broke up is just a little odd and a little questionable, I would say. So I don't know if I'm going to read that particular novel, but I'll definitely keep an eye out on anything else that they write. I would love to see more like travel books like this, where, you know, she's going to a new country and kind of exploring so much of the country. I found that to be very fun. I don't know if Alexandra Kiley will write anything outside of Scotland though, because for her, she did a semester abroad, so these books are kind of like her love letter to Scotland while she studied there. So I don't know if she would do it to any countries where she didn't live or study, if that makes sense. Speaking of loving Scotland though, the next bit of B-roll you will be seeing is easily my favorite place in all of Scotland that we visited, and that is Glencoe. The mountains were absolutely magical. The atmosphere, the vibes, the weather, like everything this day was so perfect that I wish I could relive the feeling that being in Glencoe gave me, and I'm so excited to share this with you all. And then shortly thereafter we will be returning to Edinburgh, returning to Author's Seat, so there'll be a little bit of footage at the end as well. I'm really excited for you to see how gorgeous and just jaw-droppingly breathtaking Glencoe is. I've actually managed to make a huge chunk of progress into Outlander. I am now on chapter 29, which is page 452. This really is one of those books where I struggle to find the motivation to pick it up, but then once I pick it up, it's really hard for me to put down. So I just need to remind myself that once I get into it, I'm enjoying my time and I'm having a good time, and I should continue to read it instead of continuing to put off reading it, which I have definitely done. A lot has happened. Well, okay, not a ton of things have happened, but for this book, a lot of things have happened. It really is like a slow travel adventure style of book. Like, they take a lot of time to move between one point to the next. I'm honestly running a little bit on vibes when it comes to them talking about the different clan alliances and the family history and all of that. It loses me a little bit, but again, I'm still enjoying my time by just reading for the vibes. Obviously, I'm still loving Claire and Jamie. However, there has been multiple instances where you are immediately snapped into reality that this is a man from the 1700s, from the things that he says or the things that he does that kind of give me the ick, if we're being honest. I wouldn't even say borderline assault, just like straight up assault, and I don't love that. But then part of me is also like, you know, that 1700s Scottish man, like, those were, I guess, how it was back in the day, but it still isn't like the most comfortable to read about, I'll say. But Claire continues to be super chill about a lot of things and has made a pretty big decision when it comes to her goals, which honestly surprised me because I really thought something was gonna happen, but then it didn't happen. Something else happened. So we also have, finally, an intriguing plot point, because again, this book is mainly just them vibing through Scotland and Claire trying to make her way back to present day. There really hasn't been that much like action or plot, I would say. It really meandered for a while and I didn't know where the story was going. However, a character was introduced and I am very, very intrigued, and I hope we get to see them again, because it's alluded to that they're gone and we may not get to see them or get answers from them, but it would be really cool if we did get answers. I don't know though if we'll get answers in book 1. Jeez Louise, I still have 200 more pages? Oh wait, no, this is the index. Like 175 pages left. So I still have a big chunk of this book to go, which, that's crazy. However, our next adventure actually takes us outside of Scotland, and we are going to be heading to Wales. It is the last little adventure of this vlog. I hope you enjoy. I went to a castle, and actually it's so funny because I decided, because I'm crazy and I was low-key kind of scared to take the bus, even though I'm fine now with taking public transit wherever, but for some reason anywhere outside of Japan I was like really stressed about taking public transit. So I decided to walk a few miles to this castle, which actually was kind of a cool experience because I felt like a little adventurer, like hiking to the castle as it like slowly grew from a tiny speck in the distance to like being in the castle and exploring. So I hope you enjoy that, and then we'll come back and I'll give you my final thoughts on Outlander and wrap up this vlog. I have finished Outlander, and you have finally saw all my adventures in Scotland. I've been holding on to all of that footage for over a year now, so I'm so happy that this finally can be released. I literally cheered a little after I finished this yesterday, just knowing that I finally can put this vlog out for you guys, because I've been slowly reading this for over a month, I think. So it's been slow going. And I listened to the remaining end chapters on audio, and it was a really interesting experience. So in the beginning of this book, it kind of read like a textbook before Claire went back in time. And then Claire went back in time, and then of course the romance started. And you're like, oh my god, how romantic. I love this. And then they were doing the devil's tango like every other page, it felt like. And I'm like, dang, like I was not expecting this. And then the ending happens. And Deanna decides to just traumatize all of her characters, which I was really not ready for, if we're being honest. Now, one thing about this book is it is riddled with a lot of flaws, and I would say some things that aren't really the most like comfortable to read about, certain actions, but also the ending. I definitely, if you are a sensitive reader, would look into perhaps trigger warnings for this book, because again, the ending was so crazy. Like, it went into a lot more detail than I expected it to, and it was so interesting how that situation was handled, especially with what character that the trauma had happened to and how it was dealt with past that. I felt like we kind of just glided over all of that in a way. We were sort of working through it, and then it was like magically we're all good. All that's to say, I love a character-driven story. I love when I just fall in love with characters and it becomes a case of I don't care what they're doing, I'm just there to vibe with them and to hang out and see what they do. And that's honestly how I feel about Claire and Jamie, is I don't really care about maybe other things going on in this book and the fact that there wasn't really a plot for most of it. It was mostly Jim kind of vibing and moving from place to place, and there was a little bit of stakes, and then there was a lot of stakes. So it felt like a very meandery book, I would say, but I just really loved Claire and Jamie's dynamic. I love how hot-headed both these characters are and how neither of them lets one another get away with that. And I love their relationship. Honestly, I would almost, and this isn't to diminish Outlander in any way, I would honestly almost describe this more as a romantasy, which I was not, once again, expecting going into it, but that was, honestly though, hold on. Like, the amount of magic in this book mainly has to do just with the circle of stones that Claire had touched to go back in time. So I really don't know. There was not that much fantasy. There was like alludings of witchcraft and potential speaking with ghosts, but it was very muddy, I would say. But I don't know if there was really that much fantasy in this. It really was just Claire going back in time, and that was kind of the core of the fantasy elements. All that to say though, it read kind of like a romantasy novel where, again, the writing was super simple and I just was there for the characters and not necessarily the plot. That's kind of how I felt about it. Not to like insult or diminish Outlander and what it is, but to me, that's really what it read like. I will be picking up future installments because, like I said, it was definitely one of those books that was just kind of fun to read about. In the middle. The beginning and the end was maybe not so fun with everything these characters were going through, but overall, honestly, I had a fun time, and that's at the end of the day all I really care about when it comes to my reading. So thus ends my Scotland vlog. I hope you enjoyed seeing all of my adventures. I hope you enjoyed hearing my thoughts on some Scottish leaning reads. Let me know if you have any other like Scotland set book recommendations. I just love being in the Highlands. I love the atmosphere and I love the environment, and it just reminds me so much of when I got to visit. So I feel like it really is one of my favorite locations as of late to read characters. What am I trying to say? To read stories where the characters are there. I feel like that was a really convoluted way to say it. If it's set in Scotland, I'm gonna have a fun time. That's that. Anyways, I really hope you enjoyed. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope to see you in future videos. Toodles!